Hello and welcome to English and More. I am your English teacher Shweta Roy, and today we are going to start with one short revision of all your poems of class 10. So I hope you have already prepared for your upcoming exam, which is on the 15th of Feb. And now let's have a last minute revision of all the poems. So get ready. The first one is Dust of Snow by Robert Frost. So, in short, let me give you a summary of this poem. So, this poem talks about the healing power of nature and the importance of small things in our life. So, if you remember, the poem begins with an atmosphere, with a gloomy atmosphere, which represents the bad mood of the poet, which is later cured by the restorative power of nature. So here the important points are the symbolism which is involved in this poem. So yes, the hemlock tree, dust of snow, the crow, all these are used as symbols. Hemlock tree and crow, these are the negative symbols, and dust of snow is the positive symbol, which finally transforms the poet's mood. Of course, the transformation is brought about by the hemlock tree and the action of the crow sitting on the hemlock tree. So it also talks about how nothing in nature is negative. So usually we see crow and hemlock tree. Usually crows are considered as bringing ill omen. So it is perceived as bringing bad luck. But this is what the poet has transformed in this poem. So yeah, the themes are nature's healing power, as I said, significance of small things, unexpected change, because the crow's action is unexpected, and that is again emphasizing about ordinary occurrences in nature which can bring about a positive change, and connection between human and nature, and of course how there is nothing, the superstitious beliefs that we have, that is what is challenged in the poem. Talking about the literary devices, the most important literary device which we find in this poem is enjambment, which is the absence of punctuation, and because the whole poem is just one line if you see it. Of course, we have alliteration, like we have has given my heart and saved some. So these are the examples of alliteration. We have inversion. Inversion is when the structure of a sentence is changed. This is to create, of course, the rhyme in the poem. So this is called inversion. In the first stanza, you can see the structure of the sentence is inverted. Then we have assonance. Assonance is dealing with vowel sound. So shook down on me, O sound is repeated and it's prominent. The rhyme scheme of this poem is A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D. Remember, you can get an MCQ related to rhyme scheme. So remember the rhyme scheme. You can, of course, find out easily the rhyme scheme if you have the stanza of the poem in front of you. The next poem is again by Robert Frost, which is Fire and Ice. Now, in this poem, the poet talks about the apocalyptic end of the world, which would be either by fire or by ice. Here again, the poet has used nature symbols similar to the initial one. Here, it talks about fire, which is the symbol of desire, and ice is the symbol of hatred. So, the fire and ice, these two are very, very important point is these two are concerned with the destructive features of emotions, desire and hatred. So the two ways from which the earth could be perished is either by fire or by ice. Literally speaking, fire means high temperature, ice is very cold, so we cannot survive in both the temperatures. If it rises too much, we cannot survive. If the earth becomes too cool, we will not be able to survive. That is the literal meaning. Symbolically, it talks about the unbridled emotions. If we have too much of greed, it could lead to the end of the world. If you have too much of desire, it could lead to the end of the world. Or if you have too much of hatred, that of course would lead to the end of the world. So yes, it brings about the idea that we need to have control over our emotions. If our emotions are unmonitored, it could lead to chaos, it could lead to havoc. Now the contrast, of course, is between fire and ice. One is very hot, one is very cold. And very, very important point over here is According to Frost's biography, this particular poem was inspired by a passage in Canto 32 of Dante's Inferno. Very, very important. In which the worst offenders of hell are frozen in the ninth and the lowest circle. So there in Canto 32 or in Inferno, it has been described that hell has 9 rings, and that is why Fire and Ice also has 9 lines. That's about the structure of the poem. So that is a deliberate reference to the 9 circles of hell by Dante's Inferno. Coming to the literary devices, we have this rhyming scheme ABAA, BC, BCB. Then we have assonance. Here I hold with those who favor fire. Alliteration, favor fire. World will. Imagery, yes. Imagery is there if when in the first stanza itself, when the poet says that the earth will end, the world will end in fire or by ice. That gives you a visual image of the earth literally end. I mean visually, you could see the earth ending in fire or by ice. Then we have anaphora. Anaphora is the repetition of a word or expression at the start of 2 or more consecutive lines. This is an important poetic device, so please remember this. Some say has been repeated and the repetition is in consecutive lines. Then we have personification. Fire and ice, they are personified. Enjambment is also there in these lines. So there is an absence of punctuation mark and the thought is carried to the next line. The theme is, of course, it explores the destructive power of human desires, human emotions, and how it could lead to the downfall of individuals and entire society. So society is made of individuals and the earth is made of different societies. So ultimately it could lead to the destruction of the earth. This is an apocalyptic, this can be considered as an apocalyptic poem. Then we have The Tiger in the Zoo by Leslie Norris, which creates a contrast between a tiger in the zoo and the tiger who is free, who is in his habitat, the nature. So how he behaves in a zoo, he is he has a limited space, his movement is very restricted. So first the description of the tiger has been given, how he moves quietly on his soft velvety padded feet. He feels helpless, and that creates an emotion of pity. So when we visit a zoo, we actually have pity for the helplessness of these animals who in the natural space, if we encounter a tiger in its natural space, we would actually feel very terrified, and we would be at awe at the majesty of the tiger. So very contrasting emotions with respect to the same animal we would feel, right? So that is a brilliant contrast which has been made in this poem. So in the zoo, how he would behave, and in the jungle, how he would behave. In the jungle, he would be moving quietly near the shadows, near the water source, and would be waiting for a healthy and the plump deer basically to hunt. So he would be free to hunt, whereas in the zoo, his movement is restricted. And then he would be terrorizing the houses at the corner of the jungle, terrorizing the villagers, exhibiting his white claws. But sadly, despite all his strength, all his might, what is happening with the tiger? He's locked, and he's just an object of pity, an object of entertainment for the visitors. So he moves silently up and down along the restricted area, and he's also not very interested in the visitors, and his action or his behavior and his helplessness is very pitiful, especially at the night, when it is described at the end of the poem how the tiger looks at the brilliant stars with his brilliant eyes, hoping that because stars are the only connection between his natural sphere and his restricted or artificial sphere. So how he is hoping that one day it would be possible that he would get out of this cage and he would be able to go back to his home. So theme is, of course, it talks about the mental condition of the caged tiger, creating a contrast between the natural habitat and between a very restricted life in the zoo. Although we argue that zoos are for the protection of animals, it may be true, but nowadays zoos have become more of a business for it's beneficial for business, and it is only used for business purpose, we ignore the mental state of an animal over there who resides over there. So it is very important for us to understand and empathize with these animals, because there the whole activity becomes very restricted. Instead, national parks would be a more it would be a better alternative for the animals. So poetic devices over here, we have imagery where we talk about the vivid stripes lurking in the shadows, sliding through long grass, snarling around houses, terrorizing the village, ignoring the visitors, staring at the stars with his brilliant eyes. All these are creating a mental image, a visual image of the tiger. Then we have oxymoron, which is very important. Oxymoron is the use of two contrasting words when they are juxtaposed together. Here we have quiet rage. They are opposite words, but they are juxtaposed. That is questions come from here. So that is representing the suppressed anger. Why? Because the tiger is helpless. He is unable to do anything despite his strength. His strength is locked behind the bars. Then we have personification. Of course, the tiger is personified. We have alliteration, metaphor, pads of velvet quiet. His padded feet is, the softness of the padded feet is, compared with the softness of the velvet. Then repetition, stock, quiet, brilliant, all these are repeated throughout the poem. Consonance deals with the consonant sound. The difference between alliteration and consonance is consonance can happen anywhere. Alliteration only happens at the beginning of the syllable, and assonance deals with the vowel sound. Assonance can also happen anywhere. Then we have Amanda by Robin Glenn. Amanda, from here, the major area which you have to remember is it talks about the upbringing of a girl child during her adolescence. So how, what is the expectation of the society? Based on the expectation of the society, how a girl child should behave, the parents of the girl child, they perpetrate the same instructions what the society demands. Okay, so here Amanda's parents, they are constantly scolding and reprimanding her for not being in correct posture, for not for being lazy, for not cleaning her room, for not doing her homework. She's constantly scolding. The question that comes often is related to the upbringing, the theme, and the contrast between Amanda's response and the reprimands and the scoldings and the instructions which she gets. So the poem, the portions which are within the parenthesis, that is Amanda's thoughts. Those are Amanda's thoughts, her responses, wherein she goes into an imaginative sphere of her own. So she imagines herself to be a mermaid who is all alone, and she wants to be carried away by the current of the water and feel relaxed over there. Then she also wants to be like Rapunzel, and the most depressing portion is where she wants to be an orphan. Now this is hopelessly depressing, because this is clear that Amanda doesn't understand, or there is a problem in the relationship between the parent and the child, because the parent also wants the betterment of the child, but the parents are not able to understand the feelings and the emotions of a teenage girl. She's prohibited even to eat chocolates because of her acne, which again talks about how external beauty is very, very important according to the societal standards, especially if it is a girl child. So all these are important, and all these constant instructions frustrates Amanda. She's annoyed, she's angry, and that is the reason why she seeks solace. She says freedom is sweet, silence is golden, and she wants to be an orphan roaming in the streets and patterning the dust. So she wants to be free, basically, right? And then finally, the last stanza is very, very important. The last stanza talks about how the parents of the Amanda doesn't want Amanda to be moody. The reason is people would say that she has been scolded and she is having sulky mood. So again, it talks about how it is always the expectation of the society. So the parents are not caring what the child wants. The parents only care about how the child should behave. Why? Because the society wants it, because the society demands. Of course, the purpose is the betterment of Amanda, the betterment of the child, but the way and the method can be corrected, can be modified. And Amanda is also not able to understand that the parents' purpose is the well-being of the child, because the way is not correct. So yes, there is a clash, there is a conflict of emotions, there is a conflict of ideas. Theme is, of course, as I said, control and freedom. That is the main theme, and the growing up of a teenager girl, and how upbringing is very, very important. So because due to the upbringing, due to the controlling nature, Amanda desires for freedom, and she daydreams. She has created a mental image where she seeks solace. These are the important literary devices. Repetition, Amanda has been repeated, and there is an exclamation mark. Questions often come why there is an exclamation mark. That talks about the frustration of the anger of the parents, because Amanda is not, they're constantly instructing her, and Amanda is not responding. She is in her own world or imaginative world. And that also talks about how Amanda is not able to give up, because she is a teenager. That is an adolescence period. So adolescence is very tough. It's a period of storm and stress, where that's a transition period. So she's also not able to give up the imaginative world of her childhood, and she's not able to grow up. So she's in the middle. She's in a state of chaos, where the mother and the parents are not able to understand. Allusion is an important poetic device over here. Allusion is an indirect reference to a place, a person, an idea. So here in the poem, the reference to mermaid, the reference to Rapunzel, these are all examples of allusion. Alliteration is there, metaphor, we have silence is golden, freedom is sweet. These are all metaphors. Anaphora is there, I have already explained anaphora. So don't bite, don't hunt, everything starts with don't, so that's an example of anaphora. Transferred epithet is another important poetic device. Hushed bare feet. So Amanda's transferred epithet is basically, epithet means adjective. So the adjective is transferred from one noun to the other. So what is hushed? Hushed is not the feet. Amanda is hushed, right? So it is transferred from Amanda to the feet. So that's an example of transferred epithet. Now we come to a very small poem, which is Fog. Fog is all about how, it's about nature, of course, the beauty of nature, how fog descends upon a city, and how it is animated. How is it animated? Because it is compared with an animal, cat, a lively one, right? So for a brief time, the fog covers the city and then moves on, and the entire activity, all the activities of a cat is compared with that of the fog. So this talks about the beauty of nature, but we fail to appreciate the beauty of nature. So that is the reason why it has been animated. So questions from here could be, one is the picture of fog, why it is animated, why is it compared to a cat, and then it can also talk about the problems of our life if we go metaphorically, right? How problems just like fog come in our life, and they settle for some time, just like a cat observing everything, and then afterwards they go away, just like fog coming and going. So that can also come as a question. So these are the themes. The main theme is nature, of course. The other theme, which is a deeper one, is talking about how problems of life come and go. Metaphor, we have personification. Of course, metaphor is there because the fog and cat that is compared, it's an extended metaphor. It's written in free verse. We have imagery, many examples of imagery. The fog comes on, it sits, moves. All these are example. Little cat feet. Then we have transferred epithet. The phrase on silent haunches. That is an example of haunches are not silent. The cat is silent. The fog is silent, right? So that is why it is an example of transferred epithet. Then we have for Anne Gregory by W.B. Yeats. This poem talks about the perception of love by different people, external and internal beauty, and what is important, right? So, true nature of humans, what is that? They always get carried away by external beauty. But the poet says that external beauty is not significant, that is temporary by nature. So people usually judge by, so that is why we say don't judge a book by its cover, which means don't judge someone by their external appearance, because beauty lies within. So the themes are conventional ideas of beauty and men's judgment of beauty. So the stereotypical way how society perceives a woman is based on her external beauty, which is why the poet talks about the yellow hair. So if you have beautiful hair, it is very likely that people would or men would only appreciate and look at the hair. They would not go beyond that and see what is there in the soul. So that is, people who view you beyond your physical beauty or external beauty, they are put into a stature, a higher position, a godlike stature. So this is talking about Anne, who gives into society's hollow idea of beauty and considers that coloring her hair brown or black or carrot, because men would like her for who she is and not merely for external beauty. So she wants to change the color of her hair because it's very easy to fall in love with what color she has. So that is basically talking about external versus internal beauty. So the themes are men's judgment of beauty, conventional ideas of beauty. Then we have the poetic devices. We have metaphor, honey-colored ramparts. That is an example of metaphor. Now, please understand this metaphor. It's a very interesting metaphor. This compares Anne's hair to the walls of a fort, ramparts. Okay, so the comparison is between Anne's hair and the walls of fort. What is the function of a fort? To protect the city. So just like that, the hair also hides the true self of Anne Gregory. So people would just see the hair. They would not go into the personality, into the internal beauty of the person. So it is as if it is hiding or protecting the person's individuality or the soul of the person, the internal beauty of the person. But again, external beauty is very, very short-lived and temporary. What is important is the internal beauty. Next is apostrophe. Now this is again an important poetic device. Apostrophe is it's an address to an absent audience. So in the entire poem, the poet makes an address to Anne Gregory, it's like an absent, making an address to an absent audience. Then we have alliteration, your yellow hair, so Y has been repeated. Repetition, yellow hair has been repeated. Despair has also been repeated. This is the rhyme scheme ABC, BC, BDB. Then we have how to tell wild animals. This is a very simple and self-explanatory poem, so I'm not going to explain you much, but I'm going to tell you what are the important points that you should remember from this poem. So this talks about, of course, the identification of wild animals. Here the importance should be given to the language and the humor, because these questions will come, these questions might come, and the personality traits of each animal, their physical appearance and the personality traits. Because through humor, if not humor and the poetic devices that she has employed, this poem would have been completely like a science lecture, only identification of the animals. But this is this is interesting to read only because of the humor and the language that is employed. So these two questions you should prepare. Poetic license over here is very, very important because she has employed a lot of poetic license in this poem. Poetic license is nothing but the license or the liberty to change the spelling of the poem to suit the rhyme or the rhythm of the poem. So leapt, L-E-A-P-T, instead of L-E-A-P-T, she has used the spelling L-E-P-T. Leap instead of leap. Dying, D-Y-I-N instead of D-Y-I-N-G, right? And then you have certain sentences which are inverted, like for example, novice might non-plus, if strolling forth a beast you view. All these are, if you see, the structure of the sentence has been inverted. So these are the examples of inversion, and again poetic license as well. You have personification, the animals have been personified. Alliteration, you will be able to find out, and rhyme scheme is A-B-A, B-C-C. Next we have the Ball poem by John Berryman, which is a very important poem. It is written in blank verse and free verse. So here this poem talks about how to cope up after a loss. This loss symbolizes the loss of boy's innocence. The ball in the poem symbolizes, remember, the ball symbolizes the loss of the boy's innocence. The loss of boy's innocence and the gain of experience. Experience of what? Of losing something which you are holding dear for a very, very long time. After the loss, what is the lesson learned? How to survive, how to accept that loss is something which is a part of our life, it's a permanent truth, and how to survive. So this can be divided into the boy's loss of the ball, the boys grieve over the ball, the boy is overcoming the loss. These are the three areas into which the poem could be divided. Major themes: loss of innocence, growing up, and transformation. And the poet does not interfere into the boy's grieving, because the poet understands that the boy should himself be able to learn how the epistemology of loss. What is the epistemology? The knowledge of loss and how to stand up, because life goes on. He has to move on. He is not going to get the ball back. And buying some other ball is of no use. Why? Because the boy is emotionally attached. All his childhood days he had played with that ball. So that is what the emotional connection is. It is not about the materialistic ball. It is about the emotions which is attached with the ball. So here we have symbolism. Of course, the ball is a symbol of the loss of boy's innocence, the boy's gaining of knowledge, the experience of and also becoming a man. From the innocent boy to an experienced man. Metaphor, this poem, this line is very important. It comes a lot of time. All his days into the harbor where his ball went. This is an example of metaphor, how it is drawing comparison between the lost ball and the boy's loss of childhood, because his entire association with the ball was with the childhood days. This, please remember, the explanation is also very important. If you have a question of 3 mark, then you can explain this. Alliteration, what W sound has been repeated, buy is a ball back, B sound repeated. We have repetition, ball has been repeated, how to stand up has been repeated, apostrophe again, because the little boy is absent and the poet is addressing the absent person over here. Transferred epithet, desperate eyes, because the boy is desperate, the eyes are not. So this is again an example of transferred epithet. Then we have the trees by Adrienne Rich. Here, let me tell you broadly, because this is a very complicated poem. Broadly, the poem talks about nature and deforestation. How man is destroying nature on the one hand, and ironically trying to keep bonsais and all the other plants as a decorative item in the house, which is similar to what the women, how they are treated in the society. So the liberation of the trees is equated with the liberation of the women folk. So this is a feminist poem. Adrienne Rich is a feminist poet. This is an example of ecofeminism. What is ecofeminism? Ecofeminism is when you compare the man's um, how to explain this, how man treats nature, man's domination of nature, man's destruction of nature, when it is equated with women's subjugation by men. That is called ecofeminism. Just as man is dominating over nature, killing trees in the forest, deforestation is happening. Why? Because of the growth of civilization. So it's a male dominated thing. And similarly, males are also, or rather patriarchy, I would say, not the males, but the patriarchal setup is dominating over the females. So by prohibiting or restricting the freedom of women, that is ecofeminism. So this is an example of ecofeminism. So broadly it can be divided into the return of the trees, the struggle to return. So this is talking about a feminist movement. The trees moving out of the bondage, coming out of the veranda, creating cracks in the veranda floor is equated with cracks which are happening in the patriarchal setup. Poets' reaction, and finally the trees and the freedom of the trees, especially how the last stanza is important, how they are taking over the sky, and the image created with the moon and the oak tree. So that part is very, very important. Human versus nature is one major theme. Freedom is the next one, freedom of women, which is equated with the freedom of the trees. So that is the ecofeminism. Here we have symbols. It is rich in symbolism. The trees are representing restriction and the decision to break the chains and achieve their freedom. Already I had uploaded long back a video on the trees poem explanation. So if you want, you could check the video out. It's an elaborate explanation. So please go through the video if you find any difficulty, because I'm not going line by line in this particular video. Then we have a lot of examples of simile and repetition. Forest, night, all these have been repeated. Personification, imagery, there are multiple, it's rich in visual imagery. And then finally we have the tale of Custard the Dragon, which is a ballad. Remember the definition of ballad, I think it is given in your textbook. Please read up that definition. What are the characteristics of ballad and how this is a parody of ballad? These points are important. So this is a whimsical fantasy poem in the form of a ballad, which describes a cowardly dragon's transformation into a hero. Okay, so he explores how a person's true character is revealed when during challenging situation. That is the whole theme of the poem. So crisis reveals character. This is in one line, or in short, this is the crux of the poem. Okay, so the real character of the dragon is revealed when the pirate enters into the house. Okay, and of course there are multiple examples of irony, how we expected the so-called brave animals and brave Belinda to react in such a crisis situation is just the opposite of how we expected, and how situations happened with them, and how we expected the timid or the cowardly Custard Dragon to behave, and how he came and emerged as the real hero. Okay, so we have ballad. It is usually set into music, and there are a lot of heroic features attributed to a ballad. So just read up that definition of ballad from your textbook. We have simile over here, we have repetition, we have onomatopoeia. Onomatopoeia is it's an important poetic device over here. For example, weak, then clatter, clang, jangling, all these are examples of onomatopoeia. It's an imitation, it mimics the sound. Onomatopoeia are words which are used to imitate the original sound. Then we have poetic license. Yes, this is another example, another very important poetic device. Riolio, trulio, all these are examples of poetic license. Instead of real, true, these words have been used to create the rhythmic impact. Then we have alliteration. Allusion is another very important poetic device. Over here, Percival. Percival, this definition is important for you, so just listen to this very carefully. He was one of King Arthur's knights who was known for running away due to the lack of courage. So that is the reason why Custard has been called Percival, because he was also considered a coward. Why? Because he always demanded a nice safe cage. Okay, so this is again very very important, so pay attention to this. Irony is another very very important poetic device over here. Nash has used irony to show that while Belinda and the pets considered themselves brave, they ran away from the pirate. So expectation versus reality. Although Custard cried for a nice safe cage, in the end, what did he do? He was the one who emerged as the hero, who confronted the pirates. So there also expectation versus reality. So that was all about today's lesson. I hope you have understood, and I hope I have been able to help you out with the last minute quick revision of all the poems. All the best. Thank you. Take care.